this won't be that long, so you should be, hopefully everybody will be okay standing or leaning against something. So we're really, Nora and I are both delighted that you're here. And I'm Adria Arch, and this is Nora Valdez. Her work is here, mine is in the back room, and this is Lauren Zamita, who is the curator of the Fitchburg Art Museum, and we've invited her here to facilitate our conversation about these two shows. So thank you so much, Lauren. And I'm just going to pass this on to you. And just put that on someplace.
So hello, everybody, and welcome, and thank you all for coming. It was kind of a dreary day. I was like, this either means people want to get out of the house and do something, or maybe just want to stay on the couch, so I appreciate you all coming out here. Well-deserved for our two artists here today. I'm actually going to start by hogging the spotlight for a few minutes before turning it over and asking questions. It's time I get a printer at home, don't we think? Okay. Yes, I'm a soft speaker, so if I need to speak up, yeah, sure. Not a loud speaker. I gotta work on it. Okay. Is this a little bit better? Mic closer? I need like 3 more hands.
Yes, you do. I can do this.
It actually has to be low. It has to be attached.
You can hook it on the necklace, yeah.
Do you mind?
Not at all.
Wait, I'm going to do it this way.
I will say too, I'm a mom of very young kids, and I feel scattered all of the time. So this just feels like me all the time juggling handfuls of lots of things, and go for it. We'll call it fancy. It's creative, right?
That's fine. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Okay. Welcome everyone. Off to a smooth start here. All right. So I'm just going to start by introducing myself very quickly. I'm Lauren Zamita, curator of the Fitchburg Art Museum. It's a really easy drive down Route 2 once you get out of the city, so come on down and see us there. Prior to FAM, I was at the Worcester Art Museum in the Department of Prints, Drawings, and Photographs. I studied at Boston College and received my master's from the University of Oregon. Quick bio for each of our artists here, and then just to give you the layout for today, because of the way the space is arranged, I thought it would be easiest to kind of focus on one artist at a time. But I hope that there are lots of questions. I hope it's a very collaborative conversation. And so even as all of us are speaking, feel free to jump in. I think having connections and cross-conversation would be great. Okay. So because we're going to start in here with Nora, I'm going to start by introducing Adria. We'll do like the sandwich back and forth, right? So Adria Arch has exhibited her work widely and is included in many public and private collections, including the De Cordova Sculpture Park, Fidelity Corporation, and the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. She received her BFA at Carnegie Mellon, her master's in art education at the University of Arizona, fun twist, and an MFA at MassArt. She has held international residencies in France, India, and the US, all in the last 10 years. In 2019, her work was featured at the Fitchburg Art Museum. This was curated by Lisa Crossman, and in this installation, Adria responded to the permanent collection of paintings by the museum's founder and an artist, Eleanor Norcross. So a little bit of context for Adria's work. What's really interesting about her practice is that she combines painting and sculpture and dance and movement, all of those things, as we'll see in a little bit. And this, to me, places her squarely within the sort of artistic legacy of the postmodern movement. So it's the theatricality of your work that kind of makes me think of Robert Rauschenberg. A lot of parallels there. So another artist who combined large-scale painting with sculpture and like a stage design, stage set practice. And so Rauschenberg had collaborated with a choreographer, Merce Cunningham. You may have heard of some of this. The experimental composer, John Cage, both of whom he had met at Black Mountain College, which is a super experimental educational institution in art, music, dance, design. And so the openness to experimentation with those collaborators really resonates, I think, with Adria's practice, as well as this crossover between dance and the visual arts, the sort of like physical movement and the visual arts. In a look,
I'm going to turn that off. Hold on. A little bit of a timeout here, but lower it off.
Very nice, Kate.
it's all part of the experience. And so all of that comes together in a look at the socio-political culture of the times.
Wait a second. Let her get this off. Sorry.
I felt like I had to get that sentence out,
yeah.
you know?
Okay, hold on. Hopefully.
Thank you.
All right, so you know what? It sounds like we may, let's just be a little bit louder and get up a little bit closer, Lauren. We're just going to proceed and pretend that it's all good because the blower may not be, maybe on a timer.
It'll be
So-
off in 2 seconds, right?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
okay.
So, Robert Rauschenberg and the artists of this time, and I'm going back to the 60s, experimented a lot with collaging and the juxtaposition of various objects, right? I see a lot of heads nodding. And this influenced many, many later artists, so even thinking about like land artists and feminist art practitioners, so a lot of resonance there. And all that did was encourage people to think about using non-traditional objects in their work, right? And so this conceptual art is born, right, in a way. And so Adria's work really borrows from the openness and the experimentation and this interdisciplinary reach, but reintroduces formal concerns and materiality, right? Like the materiality of the paint is super important. But we're going to come back to Adria.
Yeah.
So Nora, who's been waiting very patiently here, studied at the College of Fine Arts in Mercedes, San Luis, her native Argentina. Nora has worked in an impressive roster of countries around the world, including Brazil, Italy, Spain, and the US, including Boston, Texas, Georgia, and has been living and working in Massachusetts since 2000. Nora has created numerous public art projects and sculptural installations with residencies, awards, and exhibition opportunities around the world. A few recent accomplishments. In 2020, she received a New England Foundation for the Arts Creative Cities grant for her project We Heal, in which she worked with cancer patients. In 2022, she was awarded the Opportunity Grant from the City of Boston for her project Building Empathy. And our Fitchburg connection, in 2013, Nora was commissioned to create a sculpture on Main Street in Fitchburg, which you can still go visit and see today. Like I said, straight down Route 2, super easy. Shameless plug. And so Nora utilizes sculpture and installation to create images that reflect on the nature of change, the life of the individual, and the natural or societal forces that buffet our souls. I took that from her bio. I didn't write that, but I thought it was excellent.
Beautiful.
And so Nora's work encapsulates the current moment of contemporary art practice, which privileges the individual perspective in a way that can be universally understood. The immigrant experience, the concept of home, in our ever-expanding global world becomes increasingly relevant, especially with things like political conflict and improved technology and transportation. All of this sort of encourages and allows for the migration of humans. So Nora joined international artists like, I would say, Jacob Lawrence, Doho Sa, or maybe an early Mona Hatoum in this international conversation about identity and culture to explore a distinctly human story of belonging. And now, I would like to start. I would like to give each of them 1 to 2 minutes, maybe, to give maybe a brief description of their show And you guys might need to take my necklace. Talk about what that means to you to have this show here at the Boston Sculptors Gallery.
While you're getting yourselves stuff here. So both Nora and I are members of this gallery. There are close to 40 members, and so all of us have a chance to show pretty much between 2 and 3 years. And so I am a fairly recent member. Nora's been around a little bit longer than I. 2012, and so we're both really happy to be here. This is my second show, and Nora must be your fifth or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, so I should start, I guess, for 1 minute. Okay, so a common trait, what can I say? It's about relationships, about the immigration journey that is always in all my pieces because I can't help it. I can't get out of that. And I work a lot with the theme of home, and also I want to, and this specific show is a little different because usually people know me as a stone carver, and I do mostly just stones and public artwork, and that's the media. But in this, I've been incorporated a little bit the fabric and different materials because I kind of wanted to incorporate more my drawings. And I've been with the idea of putting this clothesline for a while. And I born in Argentina, but my father is my mother and my whole family is Italian, so kind of is a stamp in my body. The clothesline, you wash the clothes and you put it outside. And so all these memories, so this whole show is all about memories, about that, about also and inside in the drawings, they have a lot of things about displacement, things that have to be what is happening in the society, things about abortion, things about moving from one place to another, about loneliness, about love, about not having love, about not having family, so all sort of things, gender and mostly identity, that's kind of characteristic of my work. So that's kind of what I will say, relationships, and why I put a common trait, I think is because I was looking something that is something in common, and I think relationship and family, even if you come from different background or different culture, still the value, the core values are there. And so it's kind of about that.
You can keep it clipped because you're going to do most of the talking. I'm just throwing some questions at you. And I actually wanted to start with a show of hands. Who is somewhat kind of familiar with Nora's work? Pretty good. I kind of expected that. And so, as you all can see, what's kind of been introduced in this exhibition is some of the fabric and textile work, right? Everybody's kind of like, oh, Nora, she's the stone carver. She knows what she's doing with stone. But the textile work is a really interesting shift away or next to your stone practice. So I was wondering if you could talk about some connections between the two.
The clothing and the stone. It's there. Well, I mean, the way how I think is everything comes from a drawing. Even if I do a stone and even if I do commission, if they don't ask me for a model, I will go directly from my drawings. I draw in the stone and I carve. And so I wanted to incorporate more my drawings, but I do also wanted to do a clothesline. So I putting those together, I decided to use fabric. But I didn't want to use the whole shirt completely, so I kind of cut, the sleeve and cut it in pieces and use that as how I was motivating myself to do some of the drawings. And the idea of people were asking me why I just use white. If you go to Italy, a lot of the laundries, they are all white. So that kind of comes with that, but it's a few other things in there with the white. It's kind of for me a memorial too. Also, you have to keep in mind that I come from Argentina in the time of the dictatorship, when the time the military government and people were disappearing. I was living there and I left in that time, and so we used the white a lot to represent the whole era. And so I have a lot of friends and family that they disappeared, so it's just kind of like always that is in there. I didn't quite do it intentionally and go so deep on that, but that's kind of like a way to show all the not the problem, but like all the things that happen in our society. And so for me, that's how I use the connection. I mean, I wasn't thinking, okay, how this connect to my stone, but sometimes what I do with my stone, I try to always make pieces that they are very soft. I always try to be the contrast, like these ones, like I'm trying to imitate paper, and I probably should maybe make a paper bag instead of carving a stone. But I always like that kind of contrast, to have like, the hard to imitate the soft and the soft to imitate the hard. I mean, because I think it's that in all of us. I don't know if I answered that.
Yeah. And sort of follow up on that, I think in terms of materiality, there's two ways to think about it. There's the sort of physicality of working with stone versus a textile, but then there's also this element of maybe genderedness. So like with stone carving, and maybe carving in particular, there's a very like physical, that's right, yeah, very strong, physical aspect of it that I think is affiliated with maybe masculinity, but then textile work is traditionally considered more of like the women's domain. So do you think is there anything to bridging that?
Well, it's very funny because when I have all stone, or even when I'm working, even if that's my primary thing I do, everybody it haven't happened yet here, but I think it's because I have a lot of textile. They always ask me, you did this? They always, and I think it's because also I am little. I don't know. I wanted to hear. I don't want it to see that it's just because I am a woman. But it's always they always question me. They can see me with a 20-ton stone working on it, and they ask, "Are you doing this?" Yes, I am doing this. And that proof is not anything. It's nothing about size. It's like so. And I think this kind of bring maybe my feminine part, let's say, for society and what that means. But I like to work with both. I mean, I really enjoy. It was very relaxing because I can do it in my house, very warm. I have a studio that don't have heat, and I work outside. And so I was working, a lot of these pieces have been working in January and February. So, of course, yes, it's really nice. The other one, it's very physical, and, it's more tough to work with. It's true.
Okay, I was wondering if you could just walk us through the clothesline a little bit more closely.
Okay. Well, as I say, a lot of these, and some of these, like for example, when I did this piece with all the hanging houses, I realized, and I was thinking, like the time that you have to move, and when I will be able to have a house. Like I was married for 22 years, and after I separated, I've been working, just living off my art, whatever I make, and it's been very hard to obtain a house. So I keep renting, and sometimes I'm in this place and keep going back and forth. So when I was doing this, it came out actually this other piece here, which I put it like the needles because my mom used to knit all the time sweaters and scarves. She was very feminine, and she didn't like me doing any stone carving, just by the way. And that's kind of remind me, I wanted to kind of, my mother, but actually I call that tejiendo mi destino, which that means waving my destiny. And so I put it 25 houses because this is so many times I have moved since I left Argentina. I will eventually get a house. The thing is sometimes, also talking about what is affordable, and when you are an artist, things that they are very affordable, still they are not. And so you have to make things that they are affordable for, for artists too. So you know, like, so I do first work in the drawings, and after it coming up, and after you see that I have a lot of little houses, suitcases, bags. Whatever I do with suitcases and bags, they transfer to, you know, to paper bags. So sometimes I do carve a lot of suitcases, and it's not here in this show. Do you want me to explain one specific one? Some of them, they have stitches, and I thought I wanted to put stitches, and after I didn't want it. No, I did. I like a few of them, but I didn't like it in a lot of them. So also about love, you see here like a person bringing like these 3 hearts walking with, and sometimes when you come from another culture, it feels like it's not that you can never be happy, but it feels like always you're happy, but a little bit no, because you are thinking of the people that you left behind and all your family. Like, for example, here in the United States, I have a daughter, but she lives in Houston, so practically I don't have nobody other than friends. So my whole family is still in Argentina, and some in Italy. But so for me, it's that laundry all the time that is always is missing, and it's always is there. So that's the reason maybe explain how many hearts I have. I do a lot of ladders and also steps, because I feel like as long as you keep moving, it doesn't matter if you go, you are up in the steps and fall down again, keep up, go up, keep going. And I think it's like, life is, you never know. I mean, you keep going, you are up, you are down, and up and down. As long as you don't get stuck, it's always good. So it's always, and so that's like the representation I have with the steps. And in this one, the steps actually, they're upside down. If somebody knows about construction, usually that's where you're supposed to step. But I always find that when you come to another culture, like this is my 4 culture, so it's my 4 language and my 4 different things I have to get used to and immerse myself. So always it's a little difficult, because, you know, I mean, it's not that, the thing is sometimes people see differences, and sometimes people, I mean, I just don't see. I just go to a country or to things, it's just humans. I never see color, I never see gender, I never see anything. So for me, I don't have a problem, you know, but of course, when I open my mouth, people say, oh, you are not from here. But anyway, so this one, that's what I make the steps a little in the other way, because it's kind of like, sometimes it's a little difficult life, and I don't want it to complain, but you know, I mean, you have to learn a new culture, a new language, everything. When I come to this country, I didn't speak any English, so I had to learn here. So it was like, you know, but I never stopped doing things. I just keep talking. And this one, it calls Becoming One, and it's kind of like the different phases that we have just to become, and if we ever become one. You know, is such a thing? I don't know. And one of the things about not having faces, mostly when I do things in stone, I always, I took the faces because I was training. I started carving stone when I was in Spain with the people who did the public monument. And they were very purist, so we were 7 of us, and we didn't use machines, and just hammer and chisel, and because I was the little one, so always I had to do the faces. It's not that I got tired, but it's just, so I always had to do the faces, and they, but when I come here, it feels like it was more division about who your group is, you know, are you Asian, are you black, are you Latino? It's just kind of always you have to have like some sort of like stamp. And so I say I'm not doing any more faces, because when you are not carving with a model, or sometimes you ended up doing a lot of your facial sometimes, you know, like you do a hand and things come out looking like you. And so I didn't want it to have nothing to do with that, and that reason is no face. But so I don't know if you wanted to talk. I can talk about this piece.
If
About the what? Oh, the colors. Well, I was not going to use the colors. And after they were there, left behind, and I said, you know what, this is really interesting because it also gives such a presence of the human being, just by having the color. So I didn't mean it like, okay, I will make colors, in a specific, but it just come out. Because sometimes when you are working, you start with an idea, but so many times things change. It's kind of life. You can just get stuck with that, and if things happen, come to you, you just kind of try to use that. I mean, another thing that you probably see a lot is like paper boat, ladder, heart, and bags. And the ladder, well, I explained that. And the paper boat, I think, is just to kind of say that, just the moving a lot. It's not that actually I move and boat, but and I do have actually a boat in the back of my studio. It's very funny. But yeah, no, I mean, it's just like, I think just to keep like this immigration going. And this one, I kind of wanted to represent like my grandmother and mother. That, I don't know, when we have the clothesline in the patio, you always kind of like make it so, it was great for conversations, great for like to do things while the clothing dancing with the sun and getting dry, so we were having all this conversation. And they are not here anymore, so it's like an absent from them, but they are super present in my life because of the learning that they give me and all the talk. And like, for example, my mother said to me, you never give up, so that is kind of like, why? Never give up, keep going, be strong. And so that's the reason I carved the feet of a stone, because just to kind of like, they're so present, they're absent, but they're very present. And that's the idea I have for this piece specific. And this one, I use chairs, I paint, and after I draw on top. Yes.
When you did the feet, did you carve it to look like the legs were broken off, or did you actually break them off?
No, I carve it like that because like the stone was kind of uneven. So when I start, it was kind of like a rectangular, and after you carve out, you just kind of reduce to the field. Any other question? Yes.
The clothesline, do you consider each of these a single piece, or is this entire?
No, a single piece. Yeah.
These are each single?
Yeah. I mean, everything, like, I mean, they all have something to do, and that's how I put it together when I put it together a show. All the show have something to do among themselves, I mean, it can be a whole piece, but it also can be individual pieces. Yeah. Because when I do it, I do individually. It's not that I put it all together and figure
It's
out.
not meant to always be in this configuration.
Yeah. Is any other? Yes.
The houses to symbolize the places where you lived before?
Yes, where I have been living. I mean, I've been moving a lot lately in Boston, and like the rent goes up and up. And so I've been moving a lot in Boston, but also, I have things that when I left, I am from the center of Argentina, and after I was Buenos Aires, Brazil, and Italy, a couple of places, and after in Spain, and come here. And I also live in Texas, in Austin, Texas, in Jekyll Island, Georgia, and in Western Mass. Yeah. It's time to hear somebody without an accent.
All right, we can get back in here. everybody. Don't be shy. Come on in. There's plenty of room. Come on in. Okay.
All right, so I kind of kicked off Nora's section by asking her about the new stuff. And so I think, certainly to me, I think everybody else here will notice that the most strikingly new thing about all of the work in here is that it is a pretty radical departure from your extremely colorful, vibrant work. So can you talk a little bit about your decision to paint everything white?
Yes, I could. Thanks, Lauren. Hi, everybody, and I'm Adria Arch, and I know some of you, but welcome if I don't know you. And if you don't know my work, I have really been a colorist. I started as a painter, and so color really has been something that I'm not afraid of and I really enjoy. But this is the first show I've ever done where there is no color at all. So it was scary for me to do that because color is easy for me. I feel like it. And I feel, too, that this work, as I started to make it, it just didn't call for color. And so you need to listen to your work. And so when I started making these pieces early this past summer, this was my first one. And I thought about, oh, well, you know, I want to go paint it. And I started painting it, and it just didn't resonate with me. So I thought, okay, I'm going to wait, leave it white, and start making more of these things. And as I did do that, it just was clear that I think what happens is there's so much texture and so much else going on in terms of positive and negative spaces and the movement and, you know, a lot of sort of add-ons to this work that color seemed extraneous. So happily, I took a leap. And as an artist, you always want to push yourself to do something you haven't done before. At least I do. For me, that's part of the fun. That's the challenge. And if I knew the answers, I wouldn't need to do it. So I was very curious to see what would happen to just have them white.
I have a lot of questions about the presentation here. And the first one, I think, is this one here, I think this. They are kind of freestanding. So is the motion of these works important to them? What does that mean?
Yes. So Lauren was asking if the motion, and actually both of these spin. They are attached to motors on the ceiling, and they are both programmed to spin very, very slowly and to change direction and to be very intermittent. So the idea is that you're in this space, and suddenly you notice something turning out of the side of your eye, and you're a little bit surprised by it. That is exactly what I want to happen. Motion is important, and I'm so inspired by dance. I think, you know, dance is, for me, you know, the most eloquent art form. I love any kind. And so a lot of these forms are, you know, sort of inspired by movement, inspired by, you know, a sense of movement anyway, even if it's not actual movement. So I guess I wish I could make all of these move if I could. I would have liked each one of them. And some of them are actually on wheels. And so, you know, the next iteration will be little Roomba motors on them moving around the space. I really did want to do that. But yeah, I think for me, movement means life. Movement connotes liveliness and life.
So how does that, I'll let you interview me. How does that affect, if at all, how you see viewers interacting with your work, thinking about movement?
I want to provide an environment of delight and wonder for people so that, you know, to remember what awe can feel like, or to remember what a mystery can feel like. And so, you know, for me, part of the kind of fun and the thrill of having something moving, even just a little bit, you know, I think it just makes it that much more interesting for the viewer, and that much more, drawing you in. So that I deeply want people to look, underneath these things and above them and through the holes and have an interaction, a physical interaction with the work, not just a head, an intellectual engagement, but a physical engagement.
And then,
Yes, you can touch, yeah.
is that like a one-day only touch special, or is this like?
Yeah, it is a Monday, yeah. You don't want to push too hard, but you can certainly touch, yeah. Is there a little bit wonky, but yeah.
I also wanted to ask about the sort of quote-unquote platforms that they're on. What do we make of these?
Yeah, so they have platforms, and they are rather ephemeral kinds of platforms. But for me, what they do is they tie this whole installation together, because I want it to be read as a whole, as opposed to, here's one sculpture, its name is this. Here's another sculpture, its name is this. They might relate, but they, it's not necessarily so. So it was my attempt to kind of engage the whole space, to have there be, also to have the spaces where you can see the shadows really strongly. And I knew this floor is going to be dark, so I was thinking of a way that, we could have some shadows strongly cast on, well, that one on the wall is really strong, but the ones on the floor. So that was really the reason, is to tie it together, let people know this is to be read as a whole.
I was also thinking about the placement of the sculpture on each platform, and some of them are kind of very active in that they're kind of walking off, like, can I step off without anybody noticing? So I thought that the decision to kind of move them and not really center them on there helped sort of activate them. Thinking about how you're interested in movement,
Yes.
It really kind of felt like that tied it together. And my next question actually was going to be about the light and shadow. That feels like it's a very intentional decision. I mean, the feel of this space is different. It's a little bit more dramatic because I think it's got a little bit more intensity to the light and shadow. Do you want to expand on that a little bit more?
I'm sure. Light and shadow has ended up being really exciting for me to play with, and I'm still, I would say, a fairly new sculptor who, was just kind of amazed that I could make things stand up by themselves. A couple of years, that was very exciting, that I could, make something on top, stacking, and that wouldn't tip over. But then further, what happens when you have a space, this is what you can't do in painting, at least not physically anyway, is to play with the shadow, have shadows that actually move on the floor, and then, just create a set of value tones. In other words, from white to gray to black, simply by light. So it's really reflects my sort of fascination with it all. And the lighting, of course, was super important in here. So it had to be dramatic. That was such an important piece. To have people really feel like there's a moody presence in here.
Fabulous. Okay, so something that I found very interesting in the texts, actually the wall text here, there were references to both the idea of the natural life, so we talked about this as being sort of like a garden, or the viewers are part of a garden, but then also some of the references for the actual works come from our built world. And so I was wondering if you could talk about how we as viewers should reconcile those things, or maybe think about them individually or together.
Wow. Lauren, that's a really interesting question. So Lauren's referring to my statement where I actually talked about, wanting viewers to enjoy this garden. And I think I was using the word garden kind of loosely, in that it's a garden can be, a place of course for growing things, but maybe also, or sort of a place aside, a place set aside for a kind of moment. For me, it's not literally like these would be necessarily growing in the garden. I think that was really more intention. But yeah, I am inspired. I mean, I'm a city girl. I drive, walk, I take transportation all over the place, and I'm looking at the built environment. I'm looking at architecture, looking at Boston bridges, and I'm looking at trellises in people's gardens, and I'm looking at the traffic markings on the street all the time. There are these crossbars, and there are these sort of triangles, and it's everywhere. And so, as you can see, the slats and the sort of almost ladder-like things, and this was my sort of ode to a trellis, and this is my ode to a crazy chandelier. All of it kind of gets in there, and part of it is, having fun trying to make my own version of these things, but also, kind of taking off from them. So they are trellises, but they're really not a trellis. That is a chandelier, but it's not at all a chandelier. Living in the Southwest, there's amazing cactus growths, with all kinds of things growing out of them, and I think that's, come out in some of this work, where almost like a prickly pear branching out, or some of these sort of prickles coming out reminds me of that landscape. So I think that's kind of what you're seeing here. And, I just wanted to say, too, that these works, sirens are seductive. The sirens of the Greek mythology were the women who sang beautifully to the sailors who then, crashed on the islands and, came to their deaths. So, but seduction, which is what I see in some of these forms, which are sort of traditionally flowery or feminine, and then these really tall sort of guardians or sentinels that are like protectors. So I feel like this is about both seduction and protection.
Is that a comment on today's society?
Oh, yes. It is definitely a comment in today's society. Seduction and protection, exactly.
Great, thank you for that. And that was actually going to be my next question, was to talk a little bit about the title. But I kind of wanted to loop 180 degrees in the other direction, kind of go back to some of these formal questions that I was going back to, because you were talking about some of the inspirations for the forms and the prickly pear, or the prickly cactus.
Yeah.
So to go to texture, and can you talk a little bit about the texture? Because I think that one of the outcomes, or one of the effects of going to a monochromatic palette, is that there is so much more focus on the forms, but then also like the texture.
Yeah. So, right, I work with styrofoam, and it's got a flat surface on both sides. So what do you do with something that's kind of bland? And as a painter, it's like, well, it was a great surface to paint on, but if I'm not painting them, how can I make the surface come alive? What is it that I can do? So I really spent a lot of time working on pushing what can happen with texture. And so you'll see sand mixed into acrylic medium here to really be bumpy and gritty, and you'll see very slippery, shiny areas that are created with like glossy paint, and then other areas that have sort of, let's see, what have yes, it's either the gritty or the shiny glossy, and how those two things relate to each other or contrast with each other, that gives kind of more of a visual excitement, so that when you get close, you're rewarded by looking inside and seeing that, yeah, it's all got stuff going on in it. It's not like, oh, it's really interesting from a distance, but up close, you want to see, oh, what happened to here? Other little bumps, I wonder what those stand for. Some of it was simply being playful and enjoying, seeing what I could do. This has glass beads in it, so it does reflect and refract light. And other things were just, what can I build here? It's a little table. Okay, but what could go on a table that's not a table? What can go, what could go on this? Maybe to me, they do resemble furniture as well. I did want to say that too, but yeah.
Okay, I think this will be my closing question before turning it over, which is still forming in my head, which is about this idea of play, which is one of the first words that I think of when I think of your work. And the shift with this work is pretty big, and there is still definitely a playful element, but there is something a little bit more somber, especially with the idea of the siren and the sentinel. And so I guess the question is about how play comes into play with work like this, when there are these other kind of more serious overarching themes or underlying themes here?
That's a hard question. So play. I always feel like I want to play in the studio. That artwork is play, and it's serious play. But if it, I think anybody who's gone to practice, understands that it's both. It's got to have a playfulness, because if you took everything so seriously, you'd never do anything. You'd be frozen to death and scared to make a mistake. So how I approach everything in the studio is with a sense of relaxation and play, and kind of feeling like, okay, well, if I did this, what's the worst that can happen? I don't like it, I'll change it. So, that's kind of where the play comes from. But I always enjoy playful work. Like, I always find myself just, enjoying humorous work or kind of crazy. Some of you might know about Meow Wolf. That's in Santa Fe. It's a collective of artists that are putting together very exciting sort of installation, video, sound, music, art, and it's very popular. That's just, to me, so exciting. It's the closest to theater that I think I could get. So, the playfulness is really about keeping it light, keeping it interesting for myself. But yeah, there is a more somber quality, and I think, all of us have been struggling with, what does a pandemic has done to us? What have these really difficult political times done to us? And it takes a while, I think, to shake through one's practice. Like, didn't happen immediately to me. In 2020, I was still stuck doing the work that I was doing before that. But maybe now, this past summer, I'm working with them. Maybe the white is a little bit more serious. Maybe the shapes are a little bit more somber. But I hope that there's always some element of playfulness, because I don't want to ever be too serious.
Okay. I wanted to just invite again people back.
Yeah, come on. Come on in. Journey in terms of gluing things. What glues do you use to make what happen, and how do you make something stand up, and it's really a combination. But the glue that I found myself using most was the hot glue gun, the crafty hot glue gun. It's amazing. So much of that is done just for that. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, you had a question. Yeah. No, I never considered any other color. I think I was afraid to use. Yeah, I thought about if it was all black. What happens is that it sort of sinks all the light, and there's not a lot of reflection. So I also feel like that's such a somber statement. Plus, Louise Nevelson already did it, so. It was just it was going to be the color this white. Yeah.
So what's that? The white makes you have like an imagination of color.
Yeah.
Shapes and the sizes and like the textures, it just makes you think of it, maybe having colors and surfaces.
Yeah. So yes, it's leaving it open to the viewer to kind of think about it and maybe imagine. But yeah, good answer. Yeah. Hi, Judy. Hi.
Is that there was no color, and one of the things I really, I think you're saying, and I think you're just at the beginning, is playing with the light. Because I can see so many different kinds of lighting situations happening. They're almost like separate installations. And I think that aspect of the playfulness of the way we engage with it, because the light changes as people move around. Also, I think that's an exciting.
Yes, the lighting is I'm just beginning with it. You're absolutely right. And yeah, and there's some interesting artists like Hippolyte Rist, who's a wonderful installation artist and uses projected video over a lot of things. And there's lots of people who are playing with that. And so yeah, there are definitely things that I'm thinking about. Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? Well, we'll both be here after this is all over, and happy to answer any questions. But Lauren, do you want to?
Yeah, I was wondering if Nora could come up.
Nora, come on.
This is an opportunity for you all as well to ask a question to both either, but I also maybe just wanted to conclude with what would be the takeaway message or what would you want viewers to come away with after having seen your shows? That's a question for each of you.
Go ahead, Nora. Oh, good. Your turn.
Well, because I work a lot from emotion and feelings and what is happening in our society and themes, social themes. So I kind of always want to create a platform for people to talk about. And sometimes when a lot of people see reflected some of their experiences and whatever is there, with the clothesline, with the chairs, with whatever, with the paper bags. So I think I think the question is mostly for them. What is they getting? So for me, the way how I see art and my pieces, even if you hate my things, I am actually getting some feeling from you. So if I get some feeling from you, that means that my job is done. It doesn't have to be the same feeling that I am working with in my mind, but it's any feeling. I mean, if you get disturbed, you don't like it, you are getting something, you are reacting. And so that is value for me. So anyway you go, it will be okay.
Yeah, and I guess I would echo that too. Yeah, these are about feeling. They really are much, less about thinking too hard and just allowing, yourself as a physical being to just be in the space and see what happens. But, art is a form of communication. So, and we show our work because we want to communicate to other people. And yes, we hope that you do get some form of conversation from us one way or another. So, yeah.
I just want to say one funny thing. When I come to the United States, usually I never talk about my work because I am a visual artist, and always I say the work should talk about. And so they invite me to do a talk in my show, kind of like that. And the whole talk was the artist shouldn't be talking about the work. Because if we need to explain it too, that means that we didn't do a good job. But anyway, so I am used to talking now about my work, so any question I appreciate, so anything you can ask me.
Anybody else?
Let's do a round of applause.
Thank you, Lauren, so much. We really appreciate it.
Conversation. I'll just
Happy to talk to you.